Hey everyone, it's your host, Courtney Turek with Bold Moves, Confident Choices. We're here to talk with leaders and entrepreneurs about making fearless decisions and taking charge of your own path. Let's get real, get bold, and take charge of our future. So, today we have a very special guest. His name is Joe Jacobi. And believe it or not, he's an Olympic gold medalist. To top it off, he's a performance coach who positions the art of surfing waves as a process for deep reflection and meaningful life transitions, a process he calls thinking in waves. His beautiful life at home in the Spanish state of Catalonia and daily movement in nature anchor how he guided others to navigate challenges and ride their best life waves and clarity and purpose. I know his story and approach to life will inspire you to think differently about navigating challenges and transitions. So, without further ado, I am going to welcome Joe Jacobi to the stage.
Hey,
Joe.
Courtney, bon dia, amiga meva, my friend.
Oh, well, hello. So I have to ask you, do I say bon dia back?
You can. Bon dia is perfectly good. So that is good day, good morning in Catalan. So you mentioned I live in the Spanish state of Catalonia. I don't speak a lot of Spanish, but Catalan is a different language. I love to share the spirit of Catalonia with people, and bon dia is a great way to do that. So bon dia.
Bon dia. So, everyone, of course, Joe is several hours ahead of us right now, but I am super grateful, Joe, to have you with us because I had the opportunity, everyone, to meet Joe at a retreat where he was a guest speaker. And he brought just so much wisdom to us all. I can't wait for him to share his thoughts with us and really give us some great pearls of wisdom as we walk away together today. So, Joe, I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone, and that is before we dive into the big questions, we'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I guess the biggest thing I would say is that, I've made this big life move over to a different part of the world, and I've been living in Catalonia for 7 years now. But I would say, I like to sort of say that this journey started in 2009 when I became the chief executive officer of USA Canoe Kayak. And that's the same Olympic sport organization for whom I won a gold medal as an athlete in 1992 at the Olympic Games. But of course, being a leader, being a chief executive officer of an organization is really, really different than being an athlete. And that didn't always go so well. Like there were a lot of good parts to it, but it didn't go very well. I really kind of lost myself in the process. I like to tell people I was really good at taking care of others. I was really, really bad at taking care of myself.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, that took a big toll on me. I mean, especially on my health, in my sort of disposition for collaborating with people. I was always a lot more on edge and always carried a lot of tension. I had a very hard time making good choices about health. I weighed about 60 pounds more then than I do today. And yeah, that's been a journey, but it was a good experience overall. It was a learning experience, even if I didn't enjoy every minute of that. But I started to improve my life while I was in that job. And I got more curious about what I was doing. Like I thought helping America's Olympic athletes win more gold medals was like a good thing. But as I started to get healthier and kind of start to take care of myself before taking care of others, kind of putting the mask over me before others, I began to ask myself, I wonder what it might be like to get more curious about other people's stories and how they got unstuck and how some of the things that I'm learning and working through might also be interesting, not to Olympic athletes, but just to people that are trying to do better in life. And this is really what began the journey of health and wellness and creativity. Yeah, and led to some pretty significant life changes that none of them happened as like big jumps or big leaps. They were always like really small progressive steps, one leading to another. I think even by the time it came around to leaving the United States and becoming a resident of Spain, Like that didn't even feel like a big move. It just sort of felt like the next logical small step, just small step, small step, small step. And I will say that thinking has served me really well in my life and the way I sort of enjoy life today, which I enjoy life a lot today.
I can attest. He does. He's always on the water with him and his wife, Maria, who is also equally as beautiful as Joe is as a person. So, Joe, you said so much just with what you shared with us. And I find it fascinating being Olympic athlete. You are very accomplished. And here you are telling us that you were stuck and in a bad place mentally and physically with health and so much more. So, did you become self aware that's where you were? Did you have other people tell you? What was that process for you?
So, Courtney, it's such a great observation because I think one of the things that I always ran into, especially when I was like kind of heavily wearing the Olympic identity, which you know me, like I don't do that. I'm much more comfortable. Like that is just something that happened in my life. I'm really glad I had the experience. It was great. But I used to wear that identity like really heavily. But to your question, like when I wasn't in a good place, what would happen is we all have like an inner voice and we all have like a personal story that we tell ourselves about the circumstances around us when things aren't going well. And so when it came to sort of the negotiations I was having with myself about whether to get healthy or not, there would just always be this inner voice that say, "Oh, Joe, you're an Olympic champion. You know how to get out of this hole. You know how to get out of this dark place. You've done it before." And then there'd be this other voice inside of me that would be like, "Well, then why aren't you doing anything about it? You say that, but then you never do it." And that's what I always thought was so interesting. And I don't really have like the best answer for, but that's what was coming up for me. Like there was this voice that was saying, "Oh, you've done great things in your life before. Like you won a gold medal, you've done these big things. Like you know what doing hard things look like." And that would usually be enough to kind of win the argument for now. And it'd be like, okay, I have another cookie. Okay, I'll check out, and not take this meeting too seriously today. Or, it just kind of gave me permission not to take
Mm.
action to sort of improve myself or do a little bit better or try to get curious about what really might move the needle. So, in a lot of ways, what you're asking about sort of became sort of the winning excuse for me.
That's really interesting. So, really, you gave yourself permission, telling yourself you'd figure it out in the end.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh, I can get out of this. I've gotten out of hard things before." But then the voice that starts to pick up speed, the one that picks up momentum is the other voice that says, "Great. Well, why aren't you doing anything?"
Right.
And I remember just sort of at the time thinking like I'd look around me and I'd see all these people that were living the life I wanted to live or seemed to have it all figured out. And I was so convinced, Courtney, that I needed like a big change. Like I needed a big wave to come in that I could ride and take me in a new direction. Like it was not quite desperate, but really close to like desperate. That's like kind of what it felt like. And in the end, and I don't know where this came from, but the change that end up like there were two things that happened that made like a really big difference for me. Number one, I was working in Oklahoma City at the time, and we were collaborating with a group called the Oklahoma City Boathouse Foundation, a wonderful health and wellness center on the Oklahoma River, and a really nice team that works there of people. And they started an employee wellness program. And I didn't go into it thinking, "Oh, I got to lose a lot of weight." I just went into it thinking like I need something to interrupt the bad habits. The bad habits being like I would do okay with my day until about lunchtime. And then it just became like, is it going to be the all you can eat Chinese food buffet or the all you can eat pizza buffet? Which one is it? And the lunchtime workout with my colleagues at the Boathouse District, that was enough to interrupt the all you can eat food buffet. And like, I wasn't trying to lose weight. I just was trying to interrupt something that wasn't working. The other thing that was really easy to start, and when I was an athlete, I kept a training log. I would write down all my workouts and I had like a structure for logging all of my workouts and how I did that. So it was like a consistent structure I would use in my training log. And I said, "Look, the conversation I was having with myself, Courtney. I said, I don't want to live like an Olympic gold medalist again. I don't want that life. what can I take away from that life that might serve me today? So I created a very short, easy journaling framework out of that training log routine that would serve my life for where it is today. So when I woke up, instead of turning on the TV, instead of checking my messages, instead of turning on the computer, I would drink a glass of water and I would answer 3 questions in my journal. Again, something so small. You don't need the miracle morning with an hour or 2 hours of doing activities to get your energy back or to listen to your own voice. If you can just get 5 minutes, like we can start to make change with just 5 minutes.
That is so impactful right there, Joe, because I look at you and I'm sure everyone listening is this guy's an Olympic athlete. You have all the resources you need to take action. And in my mind, it's so easy. And for many of us, when we're ready to make a change, we try to go all in 100%. And guess what? We fail.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that leap is so big. And like, if we think there's some extraordinary level that we need to be operating at, like, it just becomes really hard to do. And I think that's why I always ask people before even giving them this advice. It's like, Courtney, can you wake up 5 minutes earlier tomorrow than you did today? And that's just the first question. If the answer is no, I cannot, no problem. Another time, I'll ask you again in a week, But if the answer is yes, I'm going to say, cool. If you're up for it, like just take out a paper, pencil, better that than a screen, and answer 3 questions. The first question is, what's my outlook for the day? And these are like very thematic questions, that overarching theme for the day. It could be 2 or 3 things. The second question is, what's my focus of relationships for the day? And that's not just a checklist of the people I'm going to talk to, but that's a way of giving them intention early in the morning. I wrote your name down in my journal under that question this morning, knowing that like you're still asleep, but I'm giving intention to this relationship so that it might help me show up as a better version of myself in this interview, which is great because it'll hopefully give more value to the people that are watching us. And then the third question is, for what am I grateful? 3 simple questions. I guarantee you this whole thing takes no more than 5 minutes. And if you do that practice without don't try to score it like, oh, do I feel better for doing it? Just do it and trust the process of doing it for like a few weeks. And more than likely, you're just going to notice something's different. I'm feeling a little better. What would happen if I woke up 10 minutes earlier instead of 5? And that's how these things sort of build momentum. Or in the world of surfing waves, we always like to say surfing the little waves lead to surfing bigger waves.
Yes. Joe, I feel like you just gave me a coaching class right now because you shared your journal exercise with me. And I will tell you, I really was trying to add journaling into my life. And everyone, I'm going to say I failed. But listening to Joe tell me how to implement this really simple into my day, because I really believe, Joe, when I tried to do it, I made it more complex.
Yeah, it
I got in
just
my head about it.
as simple as it can be. There's no scorecard, there's no points. Listen, at the end of what the journaling is really about over time, done consistently over time, whether you answer those 3 questions, or I even write in that journaling framework, if you just open the notebook and write, today I'm feeling ... and write for 5 minutes, that's fine too. The most important coach we're going to carry with us our entire life is our inner voice.
Mhm.
And if you can wake up and just have that little conversation with that inner voice day by day by day by day by day, and there's a lot of ways to have conversation. You can do it with meditation, you can do it with journaling, you can do it with prayer. There's a lot of ways to work with it. But in absence of the moment you turn on your phone, the moment you turn on the TV, the message you've just sent to yourself is like, their voice is more important than my voice.
Wow.
Yeah. And during that low point in my life, I'm the one that was turning on Sports Center, turning on the news, checking my email. And it was like, I just thought it was like, oh yeah, I'm getting informed. I'm getting into my rhythm for the day. But all I'm really doing is teaching myself how to tune into others people's voice, which is, there's only so much energy in the day. That's taking away from tuning in to my own voice. So I would just say, try it for 5 minutes. And then go about the normal day that you would normally do. If you like to turn on the news, turn on the news. If you like to check email, do that. My sense is that if you do something that is just tuning into your own voice for the first 5 minutes, over time, it's going to expand out a little bit. And that will give you that strengthening of not just strengthening, but just a better connection between who you are in your heart and that inner voice that's going to be with you. And what is the messaging that's happening? There's some bigger topics to get into with the development of that inner voice. But journaling for me is just a way of saying that's the most important relationship that I have first thing in the morning.
So, everyone, I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to challenge myself. I know we all have 5 minutes before we start our day. Joe, I am one of those people who the first thing I do is I open my computer and check my email. And to your point, I am now giving my day to someone else versus really grounding myself and who I am. So, you providing that context was really helpful, I know for me, and I guarantee you for so many others.
I would just say, Courtney, give it a try. Don't be hard on yourself if you don't get it all the time. We've built habits, we've built routines, that are inside of us. It takes a little while to disrupt that. One of the things that I do that also can be helpful in doing this is that, like, when you wake up, if you can I like to go running in the morning and I'm really good about getting out the door, but my running clothes are always out on the chair next to the bed. I cannot walk out of the room without making eye contact with my running clothes. I'm coming back for you, kind of thing.
Yes.
And it's like I sort of do the same thing with my little area here around me. Like when I walk upstairs in my home, I don't see a computer. I don't see a phone. My journals are out on the table. The yoga mat's already on the floor, the sitting pillow for doing a little mindfulness meditation. So my morning routine has a few different things that I do. But if all it takes is like a clear tabletop and a journal and a pen, and that's all you see, you're going to decrease the resistance between you and writing in that journal first thing in the morning. So
Right.
it's also like setting better conditions to create the likelihood that the action you want is going to happen.
Right. It makes so much sense. It's the first thing you see when you get up.
Yeah.
You'll gravitate towards it, make it happen. And Joe, I'm on it. I'm going to give you my commitment and I'm going to report back to you at the end of January.
Perfect. Yeah. I love it. We can even have a little quick, like a LinkedIn Live or a video to sort of check in on this.
I would love it because if we
Awesome.
can help somebody else to start incorporate it, then we've both done a great job here today.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to go back to really when we first started out, you were telling me that your big bold move was when you decided to move to Spain
Uh-huh.
because of everything that built up to that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. And one little bit of context on this, Courtney, is that the sport that I did for 19 years as an athlete on the US national program, it was a long time. That sport is anchored very heavily here in Europe. So I had a lot of friends here. I have spent a lot of time here as an athlete. I wasn't trying to relive something that I did as an athlete, but I did have a level of familiarity and comfort with the culture. And I knew it was an opportunity to sort of keep some of the friendships, some of the relationships that I had made with athletes and coaches from other countries intact by living here. So there was a little bit of context in the move also that I really liked the time that I spent here as an athlete. And so coming back in this context was also really interesting.
It's almost like you were going home in many ways. Is that how it felt?
Actually, you could almost bring me to tears by saying that, but you do know my girlfriend Maria. We had a very emotional moment we were visiting a church down in the Costa Brava, in Catalonia's Costa Brava, near the time that we first met. And she picked up on that and she said that to me. And I don't know where that came from, but a lot of people in the United States had family that came from Europe at
Mhm.
one point. And yeah, I don't know if it's completely truth, but it feels like it's definitely a part of the journey is kind of bringing part of the family back.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so this bold move that you had, and we jumped right into the bold move. I am so sorry because there's so much more that we can talk about with Joe. He has so much to share with us. So on back to your bold move. So you're back in the US, you're starting to sense that you're not yourself physically, mentally. You start these small steps to get back to yourself. So journaling was the key part or the key start of it all, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which also, again, that went back to the very beginning of my athletic career. Like, I mean, I had world champions and legendary coach teach me how to keep a training log starting at about age 12. The idea of writing on paper in that framework was something that was instilled to me, but I lost it for a while. I did lose it for a while.
Okay. And so that's how you got yourself back to where you are today.
Yes.
So I want to go into what you do today, and
Yeah.
that is thinking in waves and how you help others to think in waves. Can you share a little bit about how you help others, Joe?
So, yeah, I love sharing this story. So, Courtney, you live in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is, I think you're familiar with the U.S. National Whitewater Center, this amazing whitewater canoeing facility in Charlotte. It's an Olympic training center. And that was my sport for so long. I paddled on rivers and I still do. For those of you that are watching on video, you can see paddles behind me. Those short paddles are what Maria and I use on the river. The tall paddles are the kayak paddles we use in the sea. But that's the thing. Like, I've transitioned a lot into paddling in the sea, and I paddle a very specialized kayak called a surf ski, which is designed for surfing offshore ocean waves. And it's amazing. I work with a coach down in southern Spain who I see once or twice a year named Boyan. The story about this that I think plays into it is that when I first started working with Boyan 2 years ago, I went into this idea of surfing waves as like, dude, it's this like creative expression, like, don't ruin my vibe. I just want to like have fun and surf waves, right? And Boyan had this step-by-step process for surfing a wave. He's very scientific and very systematic about it. And I'm like, I said at one point, the first time, I'm like, Boyan, you're ruining my vibe. Like, I didn't know him very well. I was like, this is like insane process and systems for surfing a wave. And he's like, Joe, I'm not trying to ruin your vibe. I'm trying to give you some structure, some framework so that when you fall off the wave, you know where you are and you know how to get a system that gets you back on more efficiently. And I was like, oh. And I had this kind of epiphany, Courtney, that at that moment, oh, like inside of us, all of us have like an inner artist and an inner scientist. And we're like always wrestling these two inner artists and inner scientists out. And some people lean heavier, more heavy towards one than the other. I lean heavier towards artist, but I've been working on the scientist because of Boyan. But it became very clear to me after working with Boyan was like, oh, I can apply this process of surfing waves to sort of riding spectacular life waves. And I think the wave is really more than a metaphor. And so when you ask like how I help people, is that it's really under the auspices of first things first. I don't really care what you want to do. You want to improve in work, you want to improve in your relationships, you want to deepen your faith, whatever that is. I'm always thinking, great, how do I help set Courtney up with a better disposition to be more successful in whatever she wants to do to make that happen, so that it's not like I'm being motivated by words or a goal or a mindset, but no, there's actually a framework that helps Courtney show up as better version of Courtney tomorrow than she was today. And that is the thinking in waves process. And yeah, so there's steps to that. And I sort of use that as that idea of a way to help people more deeply reflect and ultimately work through a higher level of personal transformation. And it's lovely. I am my own like best experiment on this. I'm a practitioner of it. But now that I've been doing it for 2 years, you've heard me speak about it. I coach around it. Now we're at a point where we're starting to see like more people incorporate those ideas, and the language of of thinking in waves is starting to kind of take on its own metaphor. I'm really excited about where it's going and how it can help people.
So, Joe, for everyone, again, I want to highlight number one, you are a gold Olympic athlete who hired a coach for himself.
Yes.
So, everybody is coachable, is what I gather from that.
By the way, this
Or,
was a hilarious story about even hiring Boyan. I had never paid for a canoeing coach in my life. As you said, I was an Olympic gold medalist. I always had coaching that came to me in different ways. I never had to pay for it. And then Maria finds this place with surf skis down in southern Spain. And she says, but you can't just rent the surf skis. Boyan comes with the deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm 53 years old. And for the first time in my life, I'm paying for paddle sports coaching. And Courtney, here's the kicker. It's the best coaching I've ever had in my life. I mean, he is amazing. And it's like, yeah, so I'm making more decisions about, because surfing in waves doesn't just help me become better at surfing waves in the sea. It is literally become this framework for enjoying my life with more engagement and more flourishing. And I love that. I know like I'll never reach the destination, but I love the process of getting better at it.
So the fact is, you have a coach, which is number one.
Yeah,
He's taught you to look at life in various ways,
totally.
and your thinking in waves, what you're bringing to everyone, has been, it sounds very impactful because it actually puts a process in place for us that's manageable to start making those changes or transitions in our life.
That's it. I think so many people feel like, oh, if I could just improve this one level of my work, like I'll do better and then I'll be happy.
Right.
It's like, even if that were, you got that skill, if that's the belief system, like that's going to be problematic. Like if you believe happiness lays in front of you, this always comes up in leadership. Like, I want to lead others better. And that's always a prompt to me to look at that person and say, well, tell me about how leading yourself is going. Or people who say, like, I want to have better relationship. That's like a prompt for me to ask, well, tell me about how loving yourself is going. Like, I want to know those kind of things first. So it's always like, I'm always looking at what the first things first can be. And
Hmm.
then we will help you figure out like how to show up in a slightly better version of yourself day by day to increase the likelihood that you do get those things, you do improve on the things you want. But that the process, which Thinking in Waves does, it helps you get good about with what you are and what you have and what you're doing right now, even when some of those things are hard and difficult. Again, it's just an awareness piece, and it helps to put the first things first. And I just think that's what we're not good at doing, because you and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. It's an amazing platform, but it's like everyone says, oh, you need to do this first. Oh, you need to do that first. Oh, you need to do, everything looks like something I need to do.
Right.
And it's like, where's the discernment in it all? I don't doubt they're all really good things. I'm sure they are. But I think the discernment process is getting harder and harder for us. I think for people that are in sales, that are really, I think my experience in coaching, it's getting really hard for people that want to do well in sales. Everyone is just saying, oh, you got to do this. Oh, you got to do that. Oh, you got to do this. You got to do that. And it's like, there's such a lack of kind of first things first.
Right. People like to complicate the process. In
And
reality,
over.
it can be very simple.
Yeah. I mean, you probably forget more about that part of it than I'll ever know, because I've never worked in that, but I coach in that space a bit. But yeah, and I love doing it because I learn so much from it. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. My brain always goes, and people will tell me what they want to work on and what they need. And like my brain intuitively goes to the other place. By the way, here's another experience that you and I shared in Rhode Island. When we were watching Mace Curran, the fighter jet pilot, when she was showing us the video of the G-force training, where there was a machine that was like spinning her around at 9 Gs. She just put a video up, a story about this on LinkedIn as well. And that machine would spin up to 9 Gs for like 15 seconds, and then it would slow down for 15 seconds, and then it would speed up. And they do these cycles. And of course, our human brain goes and looks at her and says, oh my gosh, look at all that energy she's withstanding. And my silly counterintuitive brain gets all excited about like not what she's doing when there's 9 force, 9 Gs, but what she's doing when there's 0 Gs. Like, I'm fascinated with like what she's doing in recovery, not what she's doing under stress. Because what you do in recovery when you're not in stress has everything to do with how you're going to handle stress when it comes. That was just a fascinating part of her presentation to us.
We do forget that about recovery is so critical for us getting ourselves back in the right frame of mind, right frame of place. It's essential.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine like spinning at 9 Gs,
No.
and then you add, well, let's
No.
just say you could for one cycle, but then the stress of doing that, the stress level never went down. So when it starts going up again, now your stress is already at a high level. That's not going to look good the next time you start spinning at 9Gs. You got to figure out how to bring it down so that you have ability for it to go back up naturally. That was the magic that Mace, to me, what she brought in that test. But that's where my silly counterintuitive brain goes when I see that kind of thing.
Which can help us all, Joe. And I can't imagine the value you bring to so many people. I really want to just keep talking, but this time has flown by with you. And there's one question I want to ask before I have to let you go today. And hopefully, maybe we can do this again because I
Let's
still
do it.
want you to share more with all of us. But what would you tell your 18-year-old self today?
All right. I got to say, I knew this question was coming. So here's the thing. I actually prepared something to share with you about a little thing to read. So I have this thought, Courtney, that first of all, 18 years old was it was mostly a really good year for me. You know, a lot of good things happened that year. A lot of good learning experiences happened. But the thing is, they're like anyone, there've been a lot of hard things that have happened from decisions that I made when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, winning the Olympics. There were a lot of, I don't want to say good or bad. They were just decisions that led to things that became challenging later on. But here's the thing that makes answering that question so hard for me. The last 5 years of my life have been amazing. And to think that maybe I would have changed something at 18 that would have caused me not to have the last 5 years that I've had scares the freaking bejeebies out of me. And, everything from just the health and wellness, my relationship, the creativity, it's been a really, really good 5 years. And of course, like we have no guarantees on what's going to happen next. But what happened is knowing I was going to get this question, I read something from Derek Sivers is a well-known author and he founded CD Baby back in the day. He posted an article recently called One Big Choice Shapes 100 More. And he was writing about, and this is what I wanted to share with you. And he was talking about when he was younger, he almost bought a house. And then he had this sort of epiphany of, I bought this house and I have this place I'm going to live for a long time and I'm going to have a relationship. Like that's going to sort of determine a lot of things for the next 50 years. And so then he started thinking like, oh, what if we move around the world to a different place? Like, what would that look like? And so I started to sort of think about these choices that we make at different stages of our life. And I just wanted to sort of read you like the end of this blog post. He says, we make a big choice like a house, a job, a spouse, or a dog. We think about the thing itself, the look of the house, what the job pays, what a sweet dog. But the choice has so many cascading consequences. One big choice shapes 100 others. I try to imagine the ripple effects, later the details and the day-to-day difference. Then I think in reverse, knowing the consequences I want, what are the choices that would create them? What is a big choice that would nudge 100 others that way? And this idea, atomic habits, decision fatigue, one big choice decides 100 others. So it helps to think of implications and daydream backwards. And I was thinking about that in our conversation today and sharing that with you. I love that. And it's like, I don't know. I can talk to other 18-year-olds and hope that their starting point is better than mine. That would be different. But for me, it scares me so much to think that anything changed, anything that would have made my life better then might have led to me not having what I have now.
What a great point, Joe, and way to end today because that had me pause and it had me really think and reflect. So thank you.
We can share a link to that blog post in the description below. It's really a good one because I love the question. And then I think that it's a really good question for us to reflect upon. Like we can always imagine like, oh, if I'd done that, but it's also good to think, yeah, but if I had done that.
Right. Of course. Well, Joe, I can't thank you enough for being here today. And I do want to ask, where is the best place for people to find you or to reach out to you if they want to start thinking in waves with Joe Jacobi?
Well, one other thing that we'll do, I do write a very short weekly essay called Thinking in Waves that is just about thinking about how you think. I put a lot of work into it. It's really good. It's growing like crazy. It gets a great response rate. Ultimately, I just trying to give people a more clear model for thinking about how we think and the choices that we make. So we'll put a link of how to subscribe to that. I'm on LinkedIn. And of course, joejacobi.com isn't a bad place to find me either.
Awesome. And I can attest the newsletter, it's super simple, very well written, Joe. I am a huge fan of it and also a follower. So, again, thank you for being here today, Joe. I look forward to sharing more with you soon. And thanks.
Thank you, Courtney.
Joe Jacobi, thank you so much for being here today. I am so honored to have you part of Bold Moves Confident Choices. And to everyone out there, be bold, be confident, be you. Thanks.